I just thought I'd stop by and have a quick chat whilst I'm doing a little bit of painting and a few jobs in my craft room that I'm not actually filming for. This is the little unit that I showed you in the last episode that I just sort of had an idea about and then just really wanted to build. So this piece isn't actually going to be a tutorial anywhere, and I'll be listing this piece in my Etsy shop once it's complete. But I'm actually going to be experimenting with the finish on this. So I'm just applying a coat of this lovely blue, sort of bluey grey paint. And then I'm going to be aging it back by sanding. And then what I want to do is try to apply wood dye to the sanded areas and just see what sort of effect that gives. As I want this to look like a really sort of old piece that's perhaps been, you know, recycled or upcycled over the years, so it's got like a few coats of paint on it. So we'll see how that goes, and if it doesn't work I can just sort of either recut or sand back. But I think it will look quite good. So all those sort of areas that I sand back to the wood, I will then be applying the wood dye. I'm going to be using an antique pine wood dye. But I'll get all of these painted first, and then obviously we can't do that until it's completely dry. But what I was going to say to you, and I normally do say this in a lot of the videos, is to prepare your pieces before you begin a project. And by that I mean sanding the surface of each piece. I also like to just sand very gently along the cut line with the sandpaper flat on my cutting mat. Just go along each edge of the wood just in one direction so that you don't sort of round off the corners. And then sand the surface of each piece using small circular motions and just a sort of lighter grade sandpaper, so like a 500 grade sandpaper, something like that. And this is a bed that I'm working on at the moment for the 1940s doll's house. Lots and lots of pieces included in this project, and you want to sand them on both sides. And if you're using like thicker pieces of strip wood, then you can also sand them, you know, along the edges as well. And it really just gives a nicer surface to start then applying your finish. So whether it's paint, wood dye, varnish or stain, it just does give a nicer finish, and then you have less sanding to do once you've applied the paint. If you don't prepare the wood, when you put the paint on, you've probably noticed in the past, if you haven't done it, that it starts pulling the wood up. You get like little almost splinters coming up. And this will actually prevent that by sanding your wood first. And this sort of painting the pieces before construction is something I've started doing a lot lately. And I just find that you, again, get a better finish on your paint when you can sand flat pieces. If you've already built the unit, it can be difficult to get into certain areas with your sandpaper, so you end up sort of not really giving them a proper sand. And I really like this way of doing it now, by actually applying the paint first and really being able to sand each piece properly without sort of having to try and get in with, you know, files or anything like that to get right into the corners and into the back of shelves and what have you. So, you know, it's just another way of doing it to create a nicer finish. Okay, so that's all of those pieces painted. I'm going to leave those to dry completely now, and then I'll come back and we'll have a go at that aging technique. So I'll see you in a bit. Okay, so all of my pieces are now completely dry, so I'm ready to start sanding. Now I've had a go with a 500 grade sandpaper, and though that's given a really nice finish, it's not removing any of the paint, and that's the look I want to go for. So I'm just swapping it now for 180 grade, which is fairly strong. I'm not going to press too hard, but hard enough just to take away a little bit of the paint and go back to the natural wood underneath. Okay, so just by using those small circular motions and going all the way across the piece and along the edges, you can see, I don't know if I can get it to pick it up on camera, but it just starts wearing away the wood in the corners. Can you see that there? And along the edges. And that's the look I want. So I don't want to take off the bulk of the colour. And you don't really have to think about it too much, you know, just go over the whole piece using those small circular motions. And as you sort of touch those corners and side areas, that's where it will take off the paint and reveal a little bit of that natural wood. And this is really where you can decide how much wood you want showing through. And I only want a tiny bit on each piece. And then we'll put the wood dye over the top and see how that looks. So one piece down there, fair few to go. Okay, so I'll carry on with these other pieces and then I'll come back and we'll have a go with the wood dye, which I'm quite looking forward to. Okay, so I've sanded all of the pieces and I'm now going to use my soft brush to remove the sanding dust. Really important you do that, otherwise you're just putting your next layer of paint or whatever finish you're going to be using on top of dust, so it's not going to adhere to the surface properly. So we'll get rid of your dust. And before continuing, it's always a really good idea to give your work surface a clean as well. So I'm just going to get rid of this excess dust. And then I shall just use some kitchen cleaner or something like that just to wipe over my cutting mat and get rid of all the dust that gets ingrained in little cut lines. Okay, so to age the pieces, I'm going to be using this antique pine wood dye. And I've chosen this one just because it's not too light, but not too dark. This is one of the sort of medium shades. So I've given that a good shake. Got my gloves on to protect my hands from the wood dye. I've also got some pieces of kitchen towel handy, which I'm going to dab the wood dye off on as soon as I've applied it, really. And I'm going to make a start on the mouldings because then if I don't like the finish, I can just glue that side down. But let's just see what happens. So I'm just going to dip my brush into the tin rather than dispensing any because I'm not going to need too much. So if I just sort of lightly brush that over and then dab it off straight away, that's actually quite nice. So it's sticking obviously on the natural wood, but also seeping into the grain in between the colour. And that's the sort of look I wanted. So I'm going to do both sides then. I'm using a nice soft brush here. Quite like that. So that's all I'm going to do on each piece, just a really sort of light coat. Let's try a bit of a larger piece then so you can see the effect a bit better. And what I would actually say is, you know, I was quite confident that this would work, but if ever you're sort of trying something out and you're not sure, then just do a sample piece of wood. So paint it as you would and sand and everything. Yeah, see how the darker is sticking around the edges to the actual wood, and then when you wipe it, it mostly comes off of the paint. But I really like that. I'm going to do both sides of each piece, even though some will be on the inside. But until you start building, you don't really know which way around you're going to place them. It gives you that option then. Corner there. I'm just going to stand those on my plastic tray to dry, and it won't take long to dry as it's just a really light coat. And then I can start construction. So just one other thing while I'm doing this. you may have noticed I've changed the name of this new series to In the Craft Room with Julie. So I originally called it Chats with Julie, and I know that anybody who sort of watches my channel, you know, and follows me will know what that means, but for those people just sort of searching for videos, they're not going to know that that's got anything to do with crafts or anything. So I thought if I change the name, that's going to be more helpful for sort of new people coming to the channel and looking for sort of crafty vlogs and things like that. So that's why I've changed it. So from now on it will be In the Craft Room with Julie, and I think that sort of makes a little bit more sense. Those chats with Julie could be about anything, couldn't it? Okay, so I'll carry on with these, and then I'll check in with you again. So that's all of those pieces done. Really pleased with how they've come out. Now I'm going to let them dry. As I said earlier, that won't take long because obviously there's not a really heavy coat on there, but I have got a couple of other things that I want to get on with. I need to get the next patron tutorial finished today, which is going to be a nice sideboard, actually in this colour as well, but without the aging. And then I want to get on with the wardrobe for my main bedroom in my doll's house. So once I make a start on that, I'll come back to you and we'll have another chat. Okay, so I'm back now working on the large wardrobe, which is going to go in the main bedroom of my doll's house. Now, usually I can just write out the cutting list from my head. I can just sort of see how it will all go together. But with this, I want to try something slightly different with the doors. So I was having trouble sort of putting the cutting list together. I'll show you my messy cutting list book here. So I've sort of scribbled it all out and I'm starting again over this side, and I'm actually cutting the pieces and going to be laying them out on either side of the main body of the wardrobe, just so I can make sure that it all goes together correctly. Now, if I were just building this and not doing it as a sort of video tutorial, I'd probably sort of try and bodge my way through it, but I need to make sure that it is exact and that it all fits together before I then share the tutorial with you. And what I'm thinking about for the doors, because I don't want it just to look like 3 parts stuck together, I don't want there to be, you know, like build this separately and then stick it on. I want it to look like one piece, if you see what I mean. So what I'm going to do is cut the side that will stick onto this side of the wardrobe using a slightly thicker wood, so I'll probably use the 2.5, and have it slightly shorter than the other side of this piece so that the door will sit against it and not on the inside edge of it. So if I show you with the doors that I've already made, the door will go like that, as we normally do them, and you can see the side down the hinged edge of the door. But what I want to do, if we imagine it's the other way around, is have this side shorter so that the door will sit in front of it like that. So the actual side of the wardrobe will be its own doorstop, if you see what I mean. So that will sit on the inside edge and you won't be able to see that line. So then that will join up with the side of the wardrobe. If you imagine that's the side of the wardrobe there, and these side pieces will go back, they're going to be narrower than the main body of the wardrobe, and that will be the join like that. I'm probably making it sound a lot more complicated than it is, but I hope you sort of understand what I mean there, and then obviously when I do the tutorial it'll all come together and you'll see what I mean. But that's the plan, to have the door so that it looks like it's right up alongside the edge of this wardrobe on both sides. And that would be quite simple if it was just going to be a full piece like this, because then I'd just do the same thing but just make a shorter side. But I'm having drawers at the bottom, and obviously with the drawers I still need a proper side so that the drawers sort of sit into it. So that's the bit that I was struggling with. But by doing it like this and actually having it in front of me and being able to cut the pieces and then just sort of roughly fit them together, that will really help with developing the cutting list. The other thing as well, where I've got the mouldings and I was sort of doing the side piece the same as that and then sticking the moulding on, and then I thought, well, hold on, I can just do one long piece. I don't need to have a moulding where it's going to be hidden, and then we can just have a moulding going across the front, and these pieces can be as long as the wardrobe. And again, working that out sort of in my head was a little bit too difficult as well. So I need to work out now how high up I actually want the drawers. So I don't want them halfway up. I just probably want them to be a third of the height of the wardrobe, I think, and I'm just going to have a couple of drawers. So then it's a good idea to work backwards and actually work out what height you want the drawers and then do it from there. So that's what I'll do next. But whilst I'm doing that, I just wanted to show you a little bit of footage I took in the garden yesterday. And it's these two beautiful deer that they live in the woods at the back of the house, but they do spend a lot of time in that hedge that you can see there, which is actually a jasmine bush. And you can see sort of little indentations in the hedge where they pop in and out. And I just happened to look up and these two popped out together. Now it's a male and a female. The larger one is the male, but you can tell because his horns aren't fully grown yet. But if you see on the front of his head, those sort of two little round bits sticking out, that's his horns. And they do grow, I don't know how long, probably sort of 3 or 4 inches. And they're just sort of little straight horns, and that's how you identify the male from the female. But I just love how they're sort of eating together, and when they push their faces together, I thought that would have made a lovely photograph. But I didn't have my proper camera out with the lens on. But it's just such a pleasure to sit and watch them. It always takes my breath away when I look up and I see them pop out of the hedge. And sometimes I look up and just one of them's out there looking in at me. And it always makes me laugh. So I just thought I'd share that with you. So the other thing I just checked with the wardrobe as well is the actual size. So I was going to go a lot narrower with the side pieces, but when I sort of laid that alongside the main body of the wardrobe, it looked too narrow. But I just wanted to double check that if I went wider, if it would still fit in the doll's house where I want it, along that back wall with the dressing table to the right hand side. And I think that looks okay. I'm going to take a couple of millimetres off of each side, but otherwise I'm happy now with that size. I think a wider piece at each side is going to look more in keeping. So my thought was to have each side half the size of the main central part of the wardrobe. And I think that looks really good. So again, the dressing table looks a little bit dwarfed there beside the wardrobe, but once I've got the mirror on top and the stool in front, and then we can have some nice pictures, framed pictures hanging above, that will fill that area out and not make the dressing table look so dwarfed next to the wardrobe. And I still need to remake the bed. You remember I talked about this bed looking a little bit too large and actually being a bit bigger than 12th scale. So it's a lovely bed, but it just doesn't look quite right in the room with the other 12th scale pieces of furniture. So I'm going to remake the bed, use which parts of the bedding I can, and definitely reuse the crocheted runner there. But again, then it will all look sort of more to scale and more in keeping. But I will use this bed in another project. I know a couple of people said if you don't want it, I'll buy it off you, but I will keep it because I did actually buy the bed out of some money that I was left by my grandmother. So it obviously means quite a bit to me, so I will keep it and use it in another project. And then I just wanted to show you there those little candy dishes on the chest of drawers. These are part of the Chrysanthemum range, which I really like. It's all made from plastic, but it's all really true to scale, and they have some lovely details in them as well. And these are the amber coloured candy dishes, and I got a couple of extra packs and I put them in my Etsy shop if you like the look of those. Now I won't have them here on top of the chest of drawers, but I thought maybe one of them might look nice on the dressing table, maybe to keep some cotton wool balls in or something like that. But I just thought that was a really nice colour with the bedroom. But they come in other colours too. There's lovely blue, and I think I've got some cranberry ones left in the shop as well, which I always think are really nice. Nice in a dining room. Okay, but let's get back to actually cutting the pieces for the wardrobe. Okay, so I think I'm there now with the side piece. So I've got all of the pieces cut apart from the door and the drawers. And you'll know by now I always say to leave those until last and then we can get exact measurements. But I certainly wouldn't have been able to work out these sizes had I not have laid it all out like this. So that's all just propped up at the moment. And what I'm going to do is just take a couple of photos on my mobile phone camera, and then I can refer back to those when I come to do the tutorial, because I think this is actually going to be quite tricky to put together. So I've thought about the sizes, but I haven't thought about how it's going to go together yet, but I'm sure I'll sort of work that out before I get there. So what I've had to do then is just cut that side piece in there, which is cut from a thicker piece of wood as well, shorter by 2.5 millimeters, which will be the thickness of the door, so that the door will sit on top of that. And then all of the other pieces are the normal size, as we would normally do them. The only thing will be, because this side is on the inside of the back piece, this side is on the outside edge as we normally do it, and then we'd normally attach that side, you know, to the outside edge, but we're going to have to build from right to left, whereas we'd normally go from left to right, so that we can then stick that side on the inside of the back and then work that way and then attach our final side. So probably won't be too complicated once we get there, but I actually really like the look of that. So you imagine that on both sides, and then a really nice door with a moulding and some little drawers as well. And that's the moulding part that will sit on the front there. So yeah, so this then is almost ready. I'm going to prepare the pieces and paint them, and then we'll get that built up. So it shouldn't be too much longer now before I have this tutorial ready for you. I'll say hopefully by the end of next week, but don't hold me to that, as I always sort of plan things for the week and then something else comes up and things take longer than I expect them to. But yeah, I will do my best to try and get that on next week. Other things I'm working on at the moment, I've built the little unit, which was the aged unit. I'm really pleased with that. So I've still got to obviously do the door and the top, and I didn't think about having shelves on that left hand side, but I'll probably just now slot a few shelves in there, maybe just level with these bigger ones. I'm going to be having some little crates down there and a mesh door, which I think I said. So really pleased with how that's coming along, and that aging looks really good once all of the pieces are in place. So fairly pleased with that. I've got pieces over here cut for another Book 6 project, and this is going to be a little round kitchen table. And I think I've already shared the chairs on Instagram, so that's not going to be so much of a surprise. I was trying to keep a lot of them as a surprise, so it's nice when the actual book comes out to find out what's going to be in there. But I did already talk about table and chairs, so that's the table to go with those chairs. And I just thought that's nice for a smaller kitchen, just to have a little round table. So that's that. And then I've also got the pieces here cut for another Book 6 project, which again is going to be a sideboard. I'm going to do that in dark wood. And it will be very similar to the sideboard that I was talking about having finished for Patron, my next Patron project, and that's this one. And I was really pleased with how the glazed doors turned out. I've always wanted to do a door with those sort of mouldings, and I'm really pleased with that piece, and that will be coming to the channel on the 20th of March, and that's a tier 3 project, and this will be tutorial number 57. So if you were to join me today, you unlock all 57 tutorials plus everything I've ever shared, so all of the monthly vlogs, the 1940s Doll's House series, plus my Little Harbour Homewares shop series, which ran for 21 episodes before the 1940s Doll's House. So there's so much on there for you to enjoy if you were to join up. And you don't have to stay with me forever. If you just want to come over for a month or two and just, you know, take your pick of the videos, then that's fine. So hello to any of my little bitses that are watching. And I'll be seeing you actually on the 10th, so on Sunday I've got the next episode of the 1940s Doll's House to share with you, and in that we're making a start on the furnishing, so really excited about that. I've just got one more thing I wanted to update you on, and that is the guest bedroom rug. So here is the rug so far. And I'm really pleased with how it's looking now, because I was wondering if I'd made a mistake with doing this sort of little border around the inside edge of the sort of teal green colour. I wasn't sure whether it suited or not, but now I've sort of started doing this little edging border, these little diamonds. I think it does look really nice, so I'm really pleased with that. And then I'll be having the bigger diamonds in the centre there. But it is really slow progress, but I am enjoying doing it. Now, when I got to my sort of outside edge, if you can see, I've got sort of one diamond down the centre on these borders, but then when it got over here, because obviously you have to continue it in the pattern along your corner, I've now sort of gone off a little bit, so it doesn't look too bad. And actually on the larger rug that I'm using for my design, it does that as well. But if I'd have thought about this, I would have made it just slightly wider, and I'd have needed to go probably 3 stitches wider or come in a little bit so that I had the same edge down there. But as a whole, I don't think that looks too bad, and certainly when it's sort of in place, I don't think that's going to be noticeable at all. So I've got to finish this bit and then I'll start that green, but then obviously all of these need filling with the white, so that will be time consuming as well. But I think I'll start filling in rather than doing the whole thing and then filling in. Otherwise that will be quite a sort of tedious process at the end, just filling in all of the white. And just another thing I wanted to say, when you sort of finish your work of an evening or whenever, don't sort of put your pin into the centre of your rug. Always just put it off to one side or put it somewhere else, you know, put it with the rest of your materials. Otherwise it does actually stretch. So where you keep that, see how that's stretched those holes now? So I sort of keep tucking it back in there, and I'll be cutting this edging off, but don't sort of put your needle back into your work, as you will be stretching the holes. Now, I did share a discount code for the crawl wool in the last episode, so if you sort of want to use that discount, there's a 10% off discount from the Etsy shop. Object Book is the name of the Etsy shop, and I give all of the details in this last episode of In the Craft Room with Julie, as it's now called. So do take a look at that. In fact, on the Etsy shop Object Books, you just need to use the code JulieWarren10. So Julie Warren as one word and then 10. If you wanted to either order wool so that you can join in when I share the tutorial, or whether you're working on something at the moment. But this one won't be going on for a while, because I want to complete the rug and have it in place before I share the tutorial, but I will update you in these episodes. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed this episode again, and I hope this is a format that you enjoy and don't mind me sort of popping in just to have a natter every so often. And I just really wanted to do it so that I'm just not sort of gone for ages, you know, and you think that I've disappeared off the face of the earth. So yeah, let me know if you enjoyed this episode. Let me know what you're working on at the moment. I would love to know of any techniques that you like to use for aging furniture, or just anything you want to say. If you just want to say hello, that's fine. I read all of the comments, as I've said before. I don't always have time to reply, but I've been trying to put hearts on them all. But even if I don't put a heart on, just know that I do see all of your comments, and I have it set so that they pop up on my mobile phone. So wherever I am, I always see your comments pop up. So please do comment, but don't be offended if I don't reply or don't put a heart, because it really is just a time thing. And as much as I sort of say to myself, oh, I really should have a day where I just go through and answer all of the comments and, you know, put hearts on and everything, not just here, but Instagram, Facebook, you know, I never find the time to do that, so I do apologise, but I do read them, and I do appreciate your comments and appreciate you watching. And if you aren't actually a subscriber but just sort of pop over to watch the videos, please do think about subscribing, because it will really help other people find my videos. and help me reach my target as well of 75,000 subscribers this year, which is probably a bit of a big target, but we'll see what happens. Okay, so that's it. I'll let you go and get on with your day now. Have a lovely weekend and I'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye.